And I'm Dee.
We're two divorced.
Well, I'm still separated.
Okay. Working parents.
We talk about all the things you get to deal with when your marriage ends, like
Co-parenting.
dating,
Running a household all by yourself.
how early is too early for a good hard drink,
Or a glass of wine. And how do you keep it all together after everything fell apart?
This is
Demarried Life. Hi, everybody. We are back with the incredible Virginia Ronning, who is here to help us solve all of our holiday-related divorce questions. Every single topic, every single one. No pressure, Virginia.
Yikes.
Last episode, we talked about, the solo effect, being alone on the holidays, whether or not you have children, being alone. And this episode, if you haven't heard that one, please go check it out. This episode, we're going to be focusing on co-parenting for the holidays. How do you navigate, whether it's your first or 10th? How do you navigate co-parenting over the holidays? So Virginia, thank you again for being with us.
My pleasure.
All right, Dee, what have you got? We've got some viewer, listener questions. What have you got?
So first things first, I think what I would love a refresher on and what really was sort of swirling around in my head when this was happening to me was just generally when it comes to children, what are they going through when it's, what can we expect from them when it's their first holiday after a separation? I mean, we're often focused on this show about sort of how we're feeling and how we deal, but I'm curious, based on your work and what you've seen with the families that you've worked with, what are children experiencing when all of this is happening?
It's a really good question. And I think it also depends. There's several factors, variables that are part of this. And one of them is the ages and stages of development that the children are at. It is going to be most likely a loss for the children, that this is a big change for them. It's, again, in accordance with their age and stage of development, is what kind of conversations can you have with them? What do they know? What do you want to provide for them around the holidays that are still nurturing and giving them time to find their new normal? Because they will, but it's going to take a little bit of time. Communicating with the children, again, age dependent and developmentally. I mean, there may be some 15-year-olds who are saying, oh, good riddance. I'm so glad that this fighting has stopped. Let's just, thank goodness we have peace and quiet, or whatever. And you may have sort of on another end of the spectrum, you may have children who are really, really struggling with the loss of the other parent, or the absence, not loss, the absence of the other parent.
And I think you told me this when I've spoken with you before, and I'm sure I've read this before, that children tend to blame themselves, oddly, for the fact that their parents' marriage broke down, which to me seems so strange because, of course, it's got nothing to do with your sweet, beautiful, amazing children, but that really did stick with me, and I find it really profound that kids blame themselves, and I imagine that has to play into how they're feeling, especially the first year of holidays.
Absolutely. What I've heard reference to it before is magical thinking of children, is where they identify, because children are very egocentric. They need to be. Our children have to have an ego to grow up, and they're developing their sense of self. And so they do, everything kind of revolves around them. So if there's been a parental separation, they are right in the thick of it in terms of thinking that they may have somehow been responsible, or it's their fault. The other thing that's very interesting that I've just read some research on more recently is that children are, depending on their age again, are aware that part of that thinking is, I'm half mommy and I'm half daddy. So if one parent is negatively making comments about the other parent, that child is going to could start internalizing some of that negative comment about themselves. So they could start thinking, ooh, half of me isn't a good person. So again, it's coming at it. We're talking about something a little bit more here, but it is something to be really mindful of. And I think the more we as parents can stay curious and ask questions and find out where they're at, find out if they elicit a comment about, is it my fault, mommy, or is it my fault, daddy? That then we are going to know, we're going to be informed about what kind of answer to give them.
What kind of co-parenting arrangements for the holidays have you seen, and which ones do you think work well?
Yeah, this is a magic wand scenario. Absolutely and it has to start with healthy senses of self in both the mom and the dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, or any other. Sorry, I want to be really gender fair here, or non-gender. But for them to be feeling good about themselves and this new constellation, this new family organization, that then to be able to have the communication, the good communication, good, healthy communication with each other that's respectful. I think I mentioned to both of you at one point, BIF, brief, informative, friendly, and firm. If it's something we disagree with. I was watching one of Esther Perel. I don't know if she's at.
We love her.
Yeah, I love her too. And she said, all relationships have conflict. The challenge is that when we're in divorce, separation and divorce, we don't have the same love attachment to the person. So there isn't the same motivation, not even motivation, but the same sort of drive and urgency to repair. So how can you find, this is again coming back to the most ideal co-parenting, is how can you still find that level of respect and trust in the other parent to keep applying respectful communication? Because then with that, you can resolve conflict. You can figure out problems together. And that's really good for the kids. Longitudinal studies show that one of the most challenging pieces for children over the long term, intellectually, emotionally, socially, is when parents are not getting along. Mm-hmm. So if I could do anything in the work that I do, is to try to help the parents learn, because we don't teach this in school. I mean, we do a good job teaching math and English, but we don't teach you how our children how to resolve conflict. I think they're getting better about it now, but so then how to learn that, how to be able to have a conversation without getting activated emotionally.
That's actually a tie-in to a question we did have, which was someone said that they were going to be spending Christmas with their ex together with the kids, but they're still at that animosity stage and they want to find a way to not wreck it for the kids. In a case like that, if you don't think you can be nice and get along, is it maybe better to look at splitting the day? And this actually brings me back to, the original question, which is what have you seen work for splits over Christmas or the holiday?
I think the stress on two people who aren't really getting along well is so difficult especially at a time in COVID and at a special holiday. And they probably both want to do the best they can for the children, but I think it adds this burden of stress on them. And then we know children pick up on stuff. Mm-hmm. They are like little beacons that will pick up on things. So unless the parents can really resolve that animosity, I think that it might. My opinion is really just my opinion, and it would have to, of course, be in line with legal agreements and things like that. But maybe a day, half a day with one and half a day with another would be easier on everyone. Mm-hmm. Then parents don't have to be hyper vigilant too about, did I trigger? Did I react? What am I going to say now? And that even smiling, is this smile, does this feel like a real smile, or is the kid's going to know it's a fake smile? I think it'd be exhausting. Yeah. So what I have seen work nicely is Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, 23rd, 24th with one parent, 25th, 26th with the other. Same with New Year's. When there's flow between an ex mom and dad or partners, they will agree on, also doing something similar about New Year's Eve and so on. So that again, this is part of it too will depend on tradition. And whose value for more. Like I come from European heritage, so the 24th is more important than the 25th. So having those conversations to try to negotiate what everybody would try to be more at peace with.
And I think any excuse to make the holiday last longer is a good thing. Hyper focusing on that one day can be a lot for everyone. So I think, and if you extend consideration that's your best chance. I think extended consideration is your best chance at hopefully receiving consideration back. So not kind of going, ha ha ha, the way it landed, it's all mine, and you don't get to see the kids at all, you know?
Yeah.
I think anytime that we can show those little kindnesses, hopefully they'll break through here and there.
Yeah. And if you have an arrangement like that, then, you know, hopefully you circling back to the last episode, maybe you don't have to spend the whole day all by yourself. You know, maybe you get to see your kids for the evening on Christmas and Boxing Day. You can have that to look forward to, or vice versa. You can wake up with your kids and then they'll go to their other parent's house.
Just at that point in the day where you're ready to snap, you've just had it with all the craziness. It's like, okay, off you go.
Yeah.
See ya, love you.
That's the way I do it. That's the way I do it with my dad. And it works awesome because for him, it's, I think, and he won't mind me speaking for him, Christmas night just is more meaningful for him. Like the Christmas dinner on the 25th is sort of his thing that has always been. And for me, it was more the 24th. And if waking up first thing in the morning with the kids in the house is something that I really, really cherish. Not that he doesn't, he does too, of course, but you know, I get to, as you know, so far last couple of years in a row, I've got to have them on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, and he gets them later Christmas morning when I'm actually kind of honestly a little burnt out after, you know, all the craziness of opening the gifts. And
you're just sitting in that pile of stuff, just like, okay, I'm over
also,
it now. Yeah.
I mean, this year will be different, but I think for others who, if you come from a multi-generational divorced family, you don't end up in that 4 Christmases scenario, or that can be stressful too, because if you're, you know, in my family, there's quite a few people, including my parents, who are divorced. So then it's like, well, I've got to see this person, then I have to go see this. So I'll drop the kids here. And then, you know, everybody needs to be seen. And like Erin said, I like the idea of, you know, you can actually make the holiday as long as you want. It doesn't all have to happen on the 25th.
That's one gift of COVID, is the extended family element. If this is your first Christmas separated and you're figuring things out, you don't have as many maybe stressors, because you don't have to fly somewhere for Christmas on one side or the other side, because you don't have that choice. That's all been removed.
Right.
So it is stressful, but it may be this forcefully simplified.
Yes. Yeah. Blessing and a curse.
Here's a doozy. And I know this person who asked this question is far from the only one. And, you know, I wonder if this year is going to be happening even more than other years. But you know, you've got families that are planning to separate. And with the holidays approaching, this person's wondering when and how to tell the kids. And I know this, unfortunately, so often plays out during this time of the year. I don't know why, I guess just because of stress. And I mean, from what I've been reading about, you know, relationships during the pandemic this year, you know, might be extra tumultuous in that regard. But I seem to recall your advice is to not tell the kids until after Christmas.
Tell them on Christmas morning, just open a present. It says, guess what? You're getting 2 bedrooms.
So I have a couple. The first thing when you asked me the question again, Dee, was the first thing that came to my mind is that the children are going to be watching parents, right? They're going to be watching for the reaction. They're going to be watching, like if mommy tells them and she's weeping, that's going to become almost traumatic for the children, right? So it really depends on how the messaging is going forward for the kids, what they're hearing, what ages and stages of development they're at. If there is a way of postponing where parents can still treat each other well in the house, then you know, why not? So that it doesn't become traumatic, I'm using that word lightly, but a very big, very difficult event at a time.
Yeah, it'd be a bad memory.
Yeah, a bad memory, right? A really bad memory, because it is a grief and loss piece. It is the loss of something that they've known, whether it's been going well or not. It's still something they've known. It's the assurance that they've had that both mommy and daddy are there, because as you know, lots of questions are going to come up. Where am I going to live? Where are we going to, you know, all those big pieces, and it could raise anxiety. So that would be my suggestion, is if it's possible to wait, just wait until after. And if it's not possible, then to have that conversation before and make sure that both mom and dad are feeling pretty solid and grounded in the messaging that they're giving the children.
I know this stuff is never simple at all and never straightforward, but there's obviously some contradiction in that idea of, if you can keep things amicable and try to make it through for the sake of not ruining Christmases forever for your kids, you should do that. But then again, if kids are picking up on everything and animosity might seep through the cracks, is it maybe just better to just kind of call it and then move ahead with some sort of a divided up Christmas schedule?
Yeah. And you're asking a really good, really big question. And what comes to my mind is also caution around developmental needs, special needs of a child. There are so many different factors that would be at play. It is going to depend a lot on how they're communicated with and then what happens. Because it's grief and loss for the mom and dad too, even if one of them is elicited, it's still grief and loss. And so there is going to be emotion around that. And so how do you navigate that? The thing is, if you can communicate with your kids in a way that is developmentally appropriate, they're going to be assured that they have a place, that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to ask questions about it. And it doesn't have to be hidden under a rock. There are also some amazing children's books, as you both know, that can be really helpful about what that comment means to the child and what if the child says something, what can you say?
A friend just gave me one recently that I'd never heard of. I didn't know Robert Munch wrote one. It's called The Gigantic Suitcase or The Very, Very Big Suitcase.
Oh, cool.
Have you read it, Erin?
No, but I know that man's voice inside out from the 80s audio tapes. Yeah.
Such a good book. It's this little girl and she's packing up her suitcase because it's time to go to her dad's. And then, Robert Munch books, and she's putting more and more stuff in the suitcase. And then she's coming back from her mom's and she hides the cat in her suitcase. And then she hides the dog in her suitcase. But anyway, sort of the moral of the story is sometimes some things don't work out no matter how hard you try. She tried to get the cat and the dog to get along together so that they could travel with her back and forth, but the cat and the dog didn't get along. But anyway, it was very sweet. And my 6-year-old really loved the book. I know my kids like reading stories when there's kids who have, like the Babysitter's Club book, where some of the kids come from, co-parenting homes and stuff. I know it makes the kids feel a lot more normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the other thing too, is when they can see it visually, it does make it more normal. It's like, oh, other people have gone through this, so it's not they're not quite because it's going to be so new to them, and the other thing is, as you know, some parents have known for a while. And so but the children don't, they don't know. And so it'll be very, very new information for them.
Yeah, it was so interesting when my kids were pretty young. So telling them this seems weird to you now, but someday you'll see more and more families that look like our family and you'll see that it's okay. And so now they're sort of becoming go talk to those kids because you're going through what they went through and they'll tell you that it's all okay. My kids are like the trailblazers. So, but yeah, it does get easier definitely as time does go on, which is a good thing in that regard. It becomes normalized.
We can say that it gets every year. I think it gets easier for sure.
And that's the other thing too, is time. You mentioned that before, Dee, is time to remind ourselves that these things do, because we've got hopefully positive experiences that come into our lives as well, so that then we can start balancing it out.
Yeah, it's always that thing. I wish that the current person could go in time and just go back to your past self and just be like, it's going to be just fine. Trust me, you'll get there. Because I know how hard it was when I did it, when Dee did it, when we went through all this. But yeah, during a pandemic with so much economic uncertainty and all these extra social layers on top of it, it is extra complex, I would say, more so. But this too shall pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this specific question was about gifts. My ex goes really overboard on gifts. I'm worried he's spoiling them. What can I do? And so my reframe on that is, how do you learn to let go of the things you can't control?
Right.
Yeah. I think I've heard this too. People get very anxious and upset about their ex spoiling the kids to sort of curry their favor or, whatever. And I'm sure you see this type of power sort of dynamic play out. What do you have to say on this?
Yeah. So what came to mind when I read that question was, be curious, stay in a non-judgmental and curious mindset. Don't make assumptions, because there could be a lot of reasons why the other person may be compensating. There may be all sorts of things, but but to stay curious. And if you can ask questions that don't have a tone and an edge to them, maybe you can come to a place where you can make some agreements that are.
Do you mean stay curious, asking the other parent about, or are you talking about kids come home and talk about?
No, with the other parent, if it's conducive to that, if there's enough sort of a low level of defensiveness that a parent is just going to, oh, well, I just thought, blah, blah, blah. The other thing is, I don't know about you guys, but when I do stocking stuffers in my family, everybody else does them too. And all of a sudden stockings are like this big because everybody's done stockings to make sure that everybody's got enough things in them.
Yeah.
But, maybe it is a simple fix. Maybe it is. And I keep coming back to as well, a little bit of the win-win. Mm-hmm. Is there a way we can, because actually what's really important to children mostly is being time with mom and dad or mom and mom and so on, like the parents and extended family and so on.
It's evening out now, but there was a time when my kids were definitely mommy, mommy, mommy. Like it's all about mommy. And I can't imagine what that feels like for the other parent because they didn't do anything to deserve it or not deserve it.
Yeah.
So what I would do is sort of stack the gifts. If there were like the must-have gifts, the highly wanted gifts, I would let daddy give them those gifts so that, or especially if it's a game or something that's interactive that they can do together. And I always sort of give like the books and underwear and stuff.
Oh, that's great. See, that's a great solution. I think if there could be some agreement, that's where I think. And if you can't, like, you can make some agreements about, how about you cover this part, I'll cover this part.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think you're also very right about letting go of the things you can't control. We can't mandate, we're not supposed to mandate what goes on in their homes other than safety issues. But we can say, this is up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids they'll learn. And by the time they're 14 or 15, they know who to go to for what.
Yeah. It's when they start to get strategic. And then you have to have a gang up against them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We're not there yet. Whew.
I know we did a family gift last year, not a family gift, but the kids wanted a Switch and obviously those are expensive. Their dad wanted to get it for them. And then I was like, oh great. So I'm going to give them the Switch and then I'm going to give them like a book or something. And so we're lucky. We are fortunate to have that relationship. So I called them like, I want in on the Switch, can I pay half? And can we just make it very clear that it's from Santa and it goes back and forth to each parent's house. And they know that it was, a gift from both of us, which, just another way to try.
Yeah. I did like almost the exact same thing a month later for birthday, which was the Wii wasn't cutting it for the first sleepover big party pre-COVID. So I did talk to my ex and just say, hey, he really wants a Switch. Could we get a family Switch? And yeah, it goes back and forth, but it's a family Switch. It doesn't belong to any one individual. And that was the family commitment. And that worked really well. And it goes back and forth every trip.
Make sure you tell the kids that it's from me too. He's like, I did.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
It was your kids that worked my kids. They're like, you need to get a Switch, you guys, and we can play together. So then the kids, that was all the kids. But there is hope. You can find, maybe not in every scenario, but you can find collaborative ways to.
Definitely. And that's where I think starting with curiosity and not making assumptions, I think, because we can also just watch the way that we're asking, we're doing the ask.
Yes. Yeah. Because I'd come at that from like a offensive place where, what do you mean you're getting them a Switch? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, spoil them? And instead of being like, oh, I heard you're,
that's a cool idea. And I want in.
Yeah.
And then you save half the money. And he was totally into it. So yeah, he was not coming from a place at all of wanting to, get one up me with the kids. He just knew that they wanted it. I wasn't aware or pretended to not notice that that's what they wanted.
Pretended to not notice.
Yeah,
amazing.
You know what I mean? And then, asked me if I could get in on it instead of reacting to the fact that it was going to be given.
So Virginia, as we come to the close of our time together with you, are there any other closing thoughts or sort of big ideas that you just want people to keep in mind as they head into this holiday season?
Yeah, I just, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. It's actually been a lot of fun. I suspected it would be, but was more fun than I even thought. Just to sort of summarize is the three components that are really important in my mind is taking care of self-love, self-compassion. And then, children have to come first, but we also have to make sure that we're well. and that we take good care of ourselves, and then our kids will be well. And then to really do what we can to nurture a relationship with others, the exes included, because and get help if you need it. Like reach out. There are other people like myself. I'm a parenting coach. So, there are other people who do this work as well, and just help navigate some of that work so that we can come into it with open mind and curiosity.
What is the best way for people to find you if they would like to? I mean, I assume you take Zoom meetings.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Does that mean that your region has opened up a little more? Like can you see people who are a little further away?
Yeah, I can. And I Zoom, and they can just check my website out, which is virginiaronning.ca.
We'll put that on our website as well, along with the resources that you're kindly sharing with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for the great opportunity. Take care, you too.
Thank you so much for making the time to listen. We know you have way too much going on.
If you can spare a little more time, though, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Demarried Life, or visit us at demarriedlife.com for all of our episodes, articles, and lots of other great ideas for living a post-married life that isn't a total shit show.
See you there.